Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
David felt a comforting sense of relief leaving the office late that afternoon. City traffic moved slowly, but nothing could ruin his mood. He was eager to get home and see Lauren, his wife of 10 years. Their marriage had always been built on respect, partnership, and a lot of affection. He knew he was lucky. Lauren was an extraordinary woman, with a generous heart and a special way of making any place feel like a warm, welcoming home. On top of that, she was a talented cook, and the meals she prepared were one of the many reasons David loved coming home after a long day. The day before, while they were finishing dinner, Lauren mentioned she wanted to invite her new boss over for a meal. The man, Nathan, had taken the position a few weeks ago and showed a real interest in getting to know the team outside of work. According to her, he seemed charismatic and well-spoken, a leader who knew how to assert himself without being arrogant. He'd commented that he liked understanding the family dynamic of his employees because he believed it helped create a healthier corporate environment. David listened to the idea with a small smile and agreed without hesitation. He'd never been the suspicious type and saw no issue with the invitation. Besides, he always supported his wife's career and understood that having a good relationship with her boss could be a positive thing for her. The only thing that caught his attention was the quick turnover in that position. In recent years, the company had gone through several managers, some leaving suddenly without much explanation. But he didn't dwell on that. The car's dashboard clock showed 7:12 p.m. when he finally parked in front of the house. As soon as he turned off the engine, something slightly deflated his anticipation. An unfamiliar car was parked across the street. It didn't belong to any neighbor he knew. It was a black sedan, a recent model, with an impeccable shine reflecting the streetlights. Initially, David paid no mind. Maybe it belonged to a guest of one of the neighbors. When he opened the door, he was greeted by the irresistible smell of the dinner Lauren was making. The aroma of spices and fresh herbs filled his senses, and he smiled, instantly feeling at home. "Hi, honey. You made it just in time," Lauren said excitedly, coming out of the kitchen with a floral apron tied around her waist. She walked over and gave him a quick kiss on the cheek, just like she did every evening. Before David could answer, a man's voice from the living room caught his attention. "David. We finally meet." Turning around, he saw a man seated on the couch, holding a wine glass with the posture of someone who knows he draws attention. Nathan was exactly how Lauren had described him, but something about him made an intriguing first impression. He was elegant, flawlessly dressed in a dark, well-fitted suit, as if he were always ready for a business meeting. His smile was broad and friendly, and his gaze radiated confidence. He gave off a certain magnetism, the kind of charisma that makes a person stand out even in a crowded room. David met Lauren's eyes, noticing how genuinely happy she seemed to have her boss there. That reassured him a bit. He walked over to Nathan and extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, Nathan. Welcome." Nathan shook his hand firmly and gave a slight nod, as if sizing up every detail of David's expression. "Lauren has spoken very highly of you. It's a pleasure to finally meet the man of the house." He said it in a friendly tone, but something about his choice of words made David raise an eyebrow just a bit. He kept a polite smile and refused to let any suspicions creep into his mind. It was only a casual dinner. "I hope you're hungry." "Lauren made something special tonight," David said, aiming for a light-hearted mood. "If there's one thing I've learned about your wife, it's that she's an excellent host." "The wine is fantastic, and the atmosphere couldn't be cozier," Nathan replied, taking a sip from his glass, without taking his eyes off Lauren for even a second. David noticed that. It was subtle, but it made him pay closer attention. He decided not to jump to any conclusions. Maybe that was just Nathan's outgoing personality. Some people are naturally expressive and warm, which doesn't always mean anything beyond that. Following the usual routine when hosting guests, David went over to a side table and grabbed a bottle of whiskey. "Since you're enjoying the evening, maybe you'd like to try something different? I have a Scotch single malt you might like." Nathan smiled and raised his glass, indicating he was up for it. David poured their drinks with a watchful eye. Dinner hadn't even started, but a strange feeling had already begun to form in his mind. It wasn't jealousy or paranoia. It was just a hunch, a subtle premonition, as though some primal instinct was warning him that something about this situation wasn't exactly as it seemed. He set the glasses down on the coffee table and took a seat in an armchair beside the couch. Dinner had yet to begin, and while Lauren finished the last of her preparations in the kitchen, the two men faced each other, each holding a drink. The vibe was cordial, but David started noticing things he hadn't paid attention to before: the confident way Nathan leaned back on the couch, almost as if he owned the place. The way his eyes seemed to follow Lauren's every move, even when she wasn't looking. It wasn't blatant, but it was definitely there. David took a sip of whiskey, feeling it warm his throat. He decided to make conversation to better understand the man now holding such an important position at his wife's company. "So, Nathan, how's it been settling into the company? I imagine stepping into a leadership role so suddenly can't be easy." Nathan smiled and swirled the glass gently, watching the amber liquid move. "It's been interesting, to say the least. A lot of folks at the office are still getting used to my style. Some people find change difficult, but I like to get things on track quickly." David picked up on his choice of words, a subtle way of saying he liked to call the shots and take control. "I'm sure it must be challenging, especially with the last few managers leaving so abruptly." Nathan raised his gaze, and for the first time, his smile faded a bit. He studied David for a brief moment before speaking. "Oh, right. Seems there was a bit of instability before I got here. But some people just can't handle pressure, you know?" He said it casually, with no obvious sarcasm or arrogance, but something about the way he spoke set off a small alarm in David's head. Before the conversation could shift further, Lauren appeared from the kitchen, drying her hands on her apron. "Dinner's ready. I hope you guys are hungry." Nathan jumped to his feet, smiling widely. "If the food's as good as it smells, then I'm starving." He walked to the table and pulled out a chair for Lauren before David had the chance. It wasn't over the top, but it was assertive enough for David to notice that Nathan was used to moving with ease in any space he wanted to occupy. David sat across from Nathan, watching as Lauren began dishing out the plates. Dinner began smoothly, with casual talk about work, travel, and hobbies. Nathan chatted about his experiences at various companies, about how much he loved a challenge, and how he always tried to get the best out of everyone around him. He was articulate, knew how to tell a good story, and had everyone's attention. But as time went on, the compliments directed at Lauren became too frequent for David to ignore. "Lauren, you have an incredible talent for cooking. Honestly, if you ever decide to leave the office, you could open a successful restaurant." She smiled, clearly flattered. "Oh, thank you. But cooking is just a hobby. My work at the office already keeps me busy." Nathan gave a half-smile and took a bite of the meat she'd prepared. "Well, it'd be a shame to keep talent like this only as a hobby." David watched closely. The tone was admiring, but there was a subtext. Something in the way he looked at her, like he was pushing the boundaries, testing reactions. Then came the comment that really unsettled David. "David, you really are lucky. Lauren is amazing. Smart, talented, beautiful. I'd say a man needs to know how to appreciate that." For a moment, the table went quiet. David slowly put his utensils down and looked straight at Nathan, who held his gaze, a subtle smile on his lips. Lauren, meanwhile, laughed, not catching the weight behind the words. "Thank you, Nathan. I'm sure David knows that better than anyone." She was being genuine, with no hidden meaning. But David felt Nathan was playing a different game. He picked up his wine glass, turning it between his fingers and taking a sip, staying calm. Yes, Nathan. I'm well aware of the value of the woman I have by my side. Nathan lifted his eyebrows slightly, as if he appreciated the response. That's good. A man who values his wife always has a strong marriage. Things got subtly tense, though only David and Nathan seemed to notice. The evening continued, but David was now sure of one thing: this visit wasn't just a casual get-together between co-workers. Nathan wasn't there just to build professional bonds. And David had to figure out exactly what this man was really after. He tightened his grip on his glass, watching the liquor swirl around inside as he analyzed Nathan. The dinner went on with casual chatter, but in David's mind, the night had taken a different turn. The words Nathan chose, the discreet looks, the confidence with which he carried himself in someone else's home. None of it seemed like a coincidence. There was an intention behind it all, and David could sense it. He took a deep breath, still smiling politely. He wasn't the type to make an unnecessary scene, especially in front of his wife, but he also wasn't the type to dismiss his instincts. And every part of him was telling him that Nathan was testing boundaries, playing a silent game to see how far he could push. He waited for the right moment. As soon as Lauren got up to get dessert, he took the opportunity he needed. Nathan, why don't you follow me to the office? I've got a single malt I think you'll enjoy. Nathan raised his eyebrows, surprised by the sudden invitation, but soon smiled. He clearly liked a challenge. Sounds great. They headed down the hallway. David's office was a tidy space with dark wooden shelves and a large desk in the middle. When they walked in, he closed the door behind them, not abruptly, but firmly. He picked up the whiskey bottle and 2 glasses, pouring the drinks calmly, taking his time, letting the silence fill the room. Nathan took his glass and leaned against a shelf, eyeing everything with a slight smirk. So, David, what did you want to talk about? David swirled the liquid in his glass before speaking. I'll get straight to the point. You strike me as a sharp guy, so I won't beat around the bush. He looked up, locking eyes with the other man. I didn't like the way you talked about my wife. Nathan didn't respond right away. After a moment, he let out a quiet laugh. David. I think you misunderstood. I was just complimenting her. There's nothing wrong with that, right? His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, like he was challenging David again. David held back, keeping calm, but his voice stayed firm. A compliment is one thing. But there's a line between being polite and being intentionally suggestive. And I'm not the kind of guy who ignores signs. Nathan narrowed his eyes slightly. Now the tone of their conversation had changed. Interesting. So you think I crossed some line? David set his glass on the desk and leaned in a bit. I think a man knows exactly what he's doing when he chooses his words and gestures. I'm a respectful man, Nathan. More than that, I know the value of the woman I have by my side. And I won't let anyone come into my home and try, no matter how subtly, to disrespect what I've built. Nathan's smile dulled, but it was still there. He took a sip of the whiskey, keeping his eyes on David. You're a straightforward guy. I respect that. He nodded, as though weighing things. If I crossed any lines, I apologize. That wasn't my intention. David studied his expression for a few seconds. He'd chosen the right words, but did he really mean them? The silence hung in the air until Nathan put his glass down and sighed. Well, I think I got the message. You're good at protecting what's yours. David didn't need to say anything. His look said it all. They stood there in tense silence for a moment, and then Nathan smiled again, more subdued this time. Maybe we should get back to dinner. David nodded, not looking away from him. They returned to the dining room, and Lauren greeted them with a light-hearted smile. I was starting to think you two got lost. Nathan laughed, picking up his abandoned wine glass. Just a little chat between men. Your husband's a fascinating guy. David offered a faint smile, but inside, he knew that conversation had been more than just clearing the air. He wasn't sure if Nathan truly understood or was just holding back for some future play. But one thing was certain, this dinner wasn't just a friendly visit. He needed to stay on guard. Lauren placed the dessert on the table, looking pleased. She loved hosting dinners and cooking special meals. And even though David had just had a serious talk with Nathan behind closed doors, she seemed unaware of any underlying tension. Nathan came back to the table as though nothing had happened. He was more restrained, yet still comfortable. It felt like he was digesting what had happened in the office, recalibrating his strategy. David sat down, keeping a close eye on the other man. His feeling of caution hadn't let up, if anything, it had intensified. Lauren served everyone slices of her lemon pie. I hope you like it. This is one of my favorite recipes. Nathan tried a bite and closed his eyes briefly, letting out a satisfied sigh. Lauren, you really have a knack for cooking. If a restaurant were serving this pie, I'd pay top dollar just to have it. David noticed her smile and her polite thanks, and he saw Nathan lean in a bit, resting his elbows on the table in a relaxed way. David, you really are fortunate. This time, his tone was different, less openly provocative, more calculated, like he was testing the water. David kept his gaze on him. He could tell there was still something Nathan wasn't fully showing. Conversation continued, with Lauren talking about details of her job and Nathan listening closely. But at a certain point, the boss laced his fingers together and made a comment that gave David pause. You know, Lauren, it's rare to find professionals as talented as you. People who have that special spark and really make a difference wherever they go. I think you have a bright future at the company, and maybe even beyond it. Lauren tilted her head slightly, a hint of confusion on her face. Beyond it? Nathan offered a practiced smile. Let's just say that in a few months, some changes might be coming. And I'd love for you to be part of them. David slowly set his fork down, still watching Nathan. Now he understood exactly what the man was doing. This dinner wasn't just courtesy. Nathan was here to see how far he could push, to read the room, to plant ideas in Lauren's mind. The notion of changes was vague but carried a clear weight. Lauren laughed softly, not fully seeing the subtext. Well, I do enjoy what I do, so whatever's coming, I hope it's something good. Nathan nodded, taking a sip of his wine. I'm sure it will be. David knew what was really going on. Nathan's attention wasn't just on Lauren's professional abilities. He was probing for something more. It was the way he did it that bothered David. The dinner went on, and Nathan, sensing he'd accomplished what he came for, started toning it down. He didn't pile on more compliments or keep pushing boundaries. He just enjoyed the last part of the meal and, when he finished his wine, took a deep breath. I have to say, tonight was wonderful. Thank you for welcoming me so warmly. David paused a moment, then replied with a smile that didn't fully reach his eyes. Of course. We're always up for good conversation. Nathan chuckled softly, grabbing his jacket from the back of the chair and standing up. Well, it's getting late. I should head out. Lauren also stood, picking up the plates to take them to the kitchen. It was a pleasure having you, Nathan. Hope you had a good time. Nathan looked at her for a second, then smiled. I definitely did. David watched the exchange, keeping his expression neutral but feeling a pang in his chest. He walked Nathan to the door, and when the man turned to say goodbye, David noticed a spark in his eyes. Like, despite everything, the game wasn't over yet. Nathan offered a handshake. Great to meet you, David. David took his hand firmly. Likewise. As he let go, he saw the faintest grin tug at the corner of Nathan's mouth before the man turned and headed to his car. David closed the door but couldn't shake the feeling that tonight's dinner was just the first move in a bigger plan. He stood there a while, staring at the closed door. The house was quiet, but his mind was spinning. Nathan was gone, but something told David the man wasn't one to back off so easily. That final look, the way he orchestrated the entire evening. It was more than just a meal, it was a test. He took a deep breath and turned, seeing Lauren clearing the last dishes with a calm, content expression. For her, the night had simply been pleasant, a chance to meet her boss on friendly terms. But David knew there'd been much more going on under the surface. He headed into the kitchen, resting against the counter while she rinsed the plates. He seemed to enjoy dinner. Lauren smiled, not realizing the gravity behind his words. Yeah, it was a nice chance to get to know the person leading the team now. He's an interesting guy, don't you think? David held back the response that came to mind. Interesting wasn't the word he would use, more like opportunistic. He definitely knows how to make an impression. She laughed, dried her hands, and leaned against the counter, facing him. What's with that look, honey? You didn't like him? David studied his wife, feeling a pang in his chest. He trusted her, he'd never once questioned her loyalty. But he also knew the world well enough, and men who tried to manipulate it for their own benefit. I'm not sure if I like him or not. But I know one kind of man when I see one. She frowned, confused. What kind of man? David held her gaze for a moment before answering. The kind of man who never walks into a game expecting to lose. She blinked a few times, trying to figure out what he meant, but before she could speak, he leaned in and took her hand. Lauren, you're amazing. You always have been. And you deserve to be recognized for it, but not every compliment is just a compliment. Some are carefully calculated. She opened her mouth to respond but paused. David noticed, for the first time, a flicker of doubt in her expression. Maybe now she was starting to see what he had seen all night. He sighed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I just want you to stay alert. Lauren nodded slowly, saying nothing, and for now, that was enough. But for David, it wasn't over. He was never one to just stand by. He went upstairs, grabbed his phone, and sat in the armchair in their bedroom, dialing a number he knew by heart. It rang a few times before a deep, familiar voice picked up. David. Hey, my friend. How's it going? David rested his elbow on the chair's arm, staring at the whiskey in his glass. George, I need to talk to you about someone who works at your company. There was a brief pause on the other end before the company president replied. Oh. This sounds interesting. Who exactly? Nathan. He was at my house tonight. Another pause, longer this time. He was at your house? Yeah. Had dinner with us. Figured you'd want to know. George let out a quiet sigh. David could tell he recognized the name right away. I see. Leave it to me. That was all he said before hanging up, but David knew he'd planted a seed in just the right place. Meanwhile, across the city, Nathan was getting an unexpected call. He answered calmly, his tone always in control. Hello? Good evening, Nathan. He immediately recognized the voice, George, the company president. Good evening, sir. How can I help you? George's voice on the other end was calm, but it carried unmistakable weight. I just wanted to mention something curious. I heard you had dinner at the home of a very good friend of mine. Nathan frowned slightly, trying to piece things together. Sorry, I'm not sure. Yes, Nathan. You went to David's place. Lauren, who works here, is his wife. I thought it would be good to make sure there isn't any problem. Nathan said nothing. For the first time that night, he felt caught off guard. George didn't need to say more. The message was loud and clear. Nathan, a man who thrived on competition, recognized he'd been put in check. He took a deep breath before replying. "Of course, sir. I understand." "Great. Because you know what happens if you don't, right?" Nathan pressed his lips together, feeling the sting of humiliation flood his veins. "Yes, sir." With that, the call ended. He stood there, phone in hand, gripping it tightly. David had made his move. And that night, Nathan was the one who walked away defeated. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.